They move onto the infield straightaway here for the first time. But then the factory Suzuki riders really start to gang up on Canada's Ruben McMurder. Here is Kevin Schwantz as he just simply out-accelerates him onto that short straightaway and takes the lead. In the early going, the Suzuki riders performed the ballet at 170 miles an hour on their factory machines. Then it was Larry Shorts, the California rider, his afternoon ending early with a crash in turn 1. And Canada's Gary Goodfellow, who had ran up in the top 10 in the early going, retired with mechanical problems. Here is the way it's done, factory style. The factory Suzuki of Kevin Schwantz into the pits. They top up on fuel. The mechanics change a rear wheel with a brand new tire. In less than 20 seconds, Schwantz back out as he continues to dominate the Daytona 200. And it was all Suzuki's most of the afternoon, but McMurder, holding the Canadian flag high, kept up in the top 10 throughout the afternoon. The Castrol crew will service the machine, again topping up on fuel. They check over the rear wheel. The tire is okay. He's back out on the racetrack. McMurder was running around the top 5 in the late stages of the race. Michel Mercier, number 36, running back in 14th. There's Bubba Schobert. He's worked his way up into 3rd. And as the checkered flag comes out, it is number 34, Kevin Schwantz, celebrating his win in the Daytona 200, and boy, is he one happy rider.
And then the early road racing season moved across the ocean to Brands Hatch for the Euro-Atlantic match races. And you know, Pat, maybe someday we'll see a whole team of Canadians here.
Well, this year's North American squad consisted of 4 American riders, including Bubba Schobert, and 4 Canadians. Ruben McMurder, Gary Goodfellow there, number 34, Michel Mercier, and Tommy Douglas. Goodfellow was definitely the top Canadian rider in the first 3 events at Brands Hatch. Here he is battling for the lead as they go up into the Druids hairpin at this picturesque Brands Hatch circuit. Goodfellow was one of the front runners throughout the events at Brands Hatch, and here he is battling along with Schobert and number 45 Scott Gray. That's Doug Poland back and forth. Here's Goodfellow coming up to challenge Schobert, number 1, for the lead. He's right there with the factory Honda rider, and Goody's showing that he's recovered 100% from the injuries he received in Westwood last year during the Canadian Championships. Bubba Schobert leading Gary Goodfellow, then number 45 Californian Scott Gray on the factory Suzuki running back in 3rd. Goodfellow would take the lead away from Schobert. Coming through this left-hand turn and onto the straightaway, Gray 45 trying to chase them down, but here is where it all comes apart for Gary Goodfellow. He crashes while leading, goes for a slide off into the grass. Gary is okay, in fact runs over to the machine, has thoughts of getting back on it, but that'll be it for the afternoon. As far as race 1 was concerned, here in race number 2, Goodfellow, not slowed by that get-off, leads through Paddock Hill Bend.
Well, I think, Pat, one of the reasons that Gary can run so fast is that Brands Hatch is very, very similar to a lot of the circuits that Gary grew up on in New Zealand and in Australia.
There's Goodfellow leading number 11. That's English rider Roger Marshall on a Suzuki, but Gary riding extremely well here in race number 2. Marshall right with him, number 9 and 0. Those are 2 of the brand new Honda RC30s being ridden by Roger Burnett and Ron Haslam. Truly an international field here at Brands Hatch. Here is Burnett, the English rider, much to the delight of the tremendous crowd here at Brands Hatch, taking the lead away from Goodfellow. They run side by side into that turn. Goodfellow not able to get back around. Doug Poland, number 23, has the lead late in the race. Goodfellow, number 34, battling there with Schobert, number 1, and 45 Scott Gray.
Well, you know, Pat, Goody's running up front with the rest of the leaders, but at the same time, in the top 10 are 3 other Canadians, and every one of these guys out there are picking up valuable experience that they're all going to need someday.
Here's Schobert challenging Goodfellow, but Goody would eventually finish in 2nd. Race number 3, again, the traffic jam going up into Paddock Hill Bend. And as they run up into Druids, it's Goodfellow once again leading it. Schobert, number 1 in 2nd. That's the British rider, number 0, Ron Haslam in 3rd. And then number 11, Roger Marshall back in the 4th place spot. The other Canadian riders on the North American squad, Ruben McMurder, Michel Mercier, and Tommy Douglas, ran pretty consistently in the top 20. There is Goodfellow being challenged for the lead. 36 there in the gray and yellow is Michel Mercier. Number 1, Schobert leading 34, Goodfellow, but Gary certainly showed to the racing world that he was back in a big way here at Brands Hatch. 11 there, Roger Marshall holding on to third, and there was Mercier, 36, going for a hard crash. He appears to be okay.
And the next stop for our North American team on the series was at scenic Donington Park in the Midlands.
Well, the weather was misty and cool, typical Donington weather for the first of 3 races at this circuit. Heavy traffic through that first turn. There's Ruben McMurder, number 24, and the faster, longer Donington circuit appeared to be a little bit more to his liking as he really pushed the Yamaha hard here through the twists and turns and the straightaways. Coming onto the straightaway, there is McMurder having perhaps his best run of the Euro-Atlantic Challenge on the Yamaha, number 19 British rider on the Kawasaki Ray Swan a little bit further back. One of the international stars there, number 14 Peter Roboto, but there is Mercier losing it in turn 1. He is up and okay. The motorcycle into the sand there, and it looks like that'll be it for him. Through the ups and downs of the Euro-Atlantic Challenge, the Canadian riders are ready, and we'll be back with the Budweiser Sprints and the Castrol Superbike Challenge for Mosport in a moment. Welcome back to the Budweiser Sprints and the Castrol Superbike Challenge. Our very first race today is a special one, the Q107 Honda RC Shootout. 4 of the best riders in Canada on identically prepared $15,000 Honda RC30s. And Craig, there's an awful lot of interest in this race.
Oh, you bet, Pat. As a matter of fact, how about you and I having a little bet? Because anybody could win this one, and when they do, the guy that wins it gets the $5,000, the guy that's second gets nothing, and the guy down to 4th place gets nothing except the track experience. And boy, these guys are going to get scratching for this money, I'll tell you.
Well, the riders are on the starting grid, and we're just minutes away from the start.
Well, the riders are waiting for that white flag to drop, and this should be one tough sprint, Pat.
Ruben McMurder, number 1, away quickly with John Ramsey. It'll be McMurder followed by Ramsey through turn 1. Gary Goodfellow in third. Number 9, Paul McMillan running back and forth. Here is Goodfellow through and in the second as he pushes Ramsey back into the 3rd place spot. McMillan will dive in on the inside, and the Sydney, Nova Scotia rider there, number 99, Ramsey gets pushed all the way back into the 4th place spot. Ruben McMurder, number 1, leading it down under the bridge into Moss Corner. Number 100, Goodfellow up on the outside of McMillan, who will move through to the inside to grab the 2nd place spot. Number 100, that is Gary Goodfellow in 3rd, and then Ramsey 4th, single file up the long back straightaway here at Mosport. And Craig, we saw some different lines there through Moss Corner.
Well, to tell you the truth, I think that Gary Goodfellow's got the right line, and we'll just have to wait and see how it works out for him, Pat.
They battle side by side into the S's. Goodfellow has closed right up on McMurder and McMillan. And this race that promised to be a close one is everything that it was built to be. McMurder, number 1, leading it down through turn 1. McMillan, number 9, is right there. Goodfellow, number 103rd. Ramsey right now having some problems staying up with the front-running 3 riders. And again, they're on identical RC30 Hondas, costing about $15,000. They're running on slick tires, although they're box stock machines. Here's McMurder, number 1, leading McMillan and 100 Goodfellow. And you can see that these riders are really pushing the machines to the limit, Craig.
Oh, you bet. And look at here. Here comes Goodfellow. And see that tight line? And then he moves out to the outside of the track, and he moves back down again. That's the proper way to run Moss Corner at Mosport, Pat. You know what happens when you do it that way? You get that acceleration out of the corner, and you just about can beat anybody.
Well, Gary is pulled about 15 bike lengths ahead of Ruben McMurder and Paul McMillan. But you know, Craig, none of these riders are any strangers to production machinery. They all began their road racing careers on production bikes, and they're really flogging these machines right around Mosport. There's that race for a second. McMurder, number 1, holding off McMillan. Goody has opened up a bit of a lead, and as you said, that was a result of that very quick line through Moss Corner. But again, they'll try to close it back up. McMurder right now and McMillan side by side into turn 2.
Well, Gary's got a good lead, but Paul McMillan is a rider that has a shot at taking this away from Goodfellow. He knows the track. He's a former Canadian champion. I asked him earlier what his motivation was for this shootout.
You know, there's a lot of prize money at stake, but to be honest with you, that's secondary. It's a matter of principle. I want to change the way people are looking at me from last season. So it's not a matter of money. It's a matter of principle, and I'd really like to set a good impression on the RC30 for Honda, as well as for our team.
Paul McMillan trying to make an impression here on Gary Goodfellow. We're on the last lap through Moss Corner for the final time. It's Gary Goodfellow by just a bike length and a half. McMillan is right there. McMurder a few bike lengths further back. Heading up the back straightaway, Gary Goodfellow holding off Paul McMillan. McMillan working to within just a bike length. You can see the motorcycles working as they come up the back straightaway. Over the hill, it's McMillan to within half a bike length of Goodfellow as they go through the S's now for the final time. McMillan just has a couple of corners in which to make his move through turn 9. He is right there. He'll try to pull to the inside, but Goodfellow will hold him off the checkered flag. Coming out here at the finish line, Goodfellow up to the stripe. He will win it. McMillan in second.
And what a great start for Vancouver's Gary Goodfellow, a win and $5,000. And we'll be right back with more from Mosport Park right after this.
To the Budweiser Sprints and the Castrol Superbike Challenge. The bikes are rolling up to the starting grid for our 24-lap Superbike race. Qualifying was oh so exciting here earlier this weekend. Ruben McMurder won it, but just by a few bike lengths over Paul McMillan. The surprise of qualifying was the young 19-year-old from Cleveland, Ohio, Tom Kipp, and he's been getting faster all weekend. The big disappointment in qualifying was Art Robbins. He had mechanical problems with his machine. He'll be starting in the back, but they feel they've corrected the problems on his Suzuki. Another rider to watch from the back of the grid will be Kevin Rensell from Tennessee. Rensell ran a lot of laps here earlier this weekend. He should be ready to make a charge to the front. Now here's Craig Hill.
And it's good to see the veteran Frank Mrazek, number 77, there up on row number 3. And we're just about ready to start our first Castrol race of '88.
Starter Dan Gregorov throws the white flag, the field away. Mark Bugas, the rider from Massachusetts, battling with Paul McMillan and Ruben McMurder into turn 1. And it'll be McMillan coming out of there with the lead. Bugas holding second, being challenged by McMurder, who will now take over the second place spot. Bugas, number 105, back in third. And he has caught close company there as rider number 100, Gary Goodfellow, runs back in the fourth place spot. Into Moss Corner here on the opening lap. McMillan, your leader. Number 1, McMurder in second. Then it's Bugas, 105, third. Tom Kipp, the 19-year-old from Cleveland, Ohio, has moved around Goodfellow into that fourth place position. But Goodfellow doing a pretty good job on a stock Honda RC30, Craig.
Oh, you bet. That bike is awfully fast for a stock bike, and it'll be interesting to see how quick Gary is after he gets his race kit on it, Pat.
Paul McMillan by about 10 bike lengths through the S's. Ruben McMurder right there in second. Then a bit of a gap to a pretty good four-way battle going on for that third place position. There's McMillan and McMurder. They've closed that up just a little bit as they come across the line to complete lap number 1. And the front-running two riders, Craig, quickly are making this strictly a two-rider race.
Well, McMillan is riding an awfully good race, but, you know, McMurder seems to have found the power in that Honda this weekend, Pat, and I'm sure that he'll be able to outpull him up the straightaway.
Of course, a year ago, the Rothmans Honda team was plagued by mechanical problems, but here this weekend at Mosport, that Honda has not missed a beat. McMurder right there with Paul McMillan.
Well, you can see Paul, he's riding it hard into the corners, Pat, but McMurder's hanging right on there because I know he's going to give him a slingshot one of these times up that long straightaway.
Great four-way battle going on for third, just behind the lead duo. It's Tom Kipp, 332, running in that third place spot, then Bugas, followed by 100 Goodfellow and number 87 Murphy, side by side over the top of the hill, and McMurder has taken the lead. The Honda showing the horsepower up the back straightaway. McMillan just a few bike lengths off of McMurder's rear tire as they lean left, then right, going through the S's. Ruben McMurder goes to the front. McMillan, number 9, right there in second, and you can see McMurder really tucking in on the straightaway. He then comes up from behind the fairing as they get on the brakes to go down through turn number 1. There is Art Robbins, number 47. He is well off the pace. They just have not got that motorcycle sorted out this weekend. This has been the surprise of the race so far. 332 Tom Kipp. Fourth place rider is 105 Mark Bugas out of Bedford, Mass. Then Murphy, number 87, followed by Gary Goodfellow, number 100. They were a lot closer a couple of laps ago as that four-way battle continues. Up front, McMurder, number 1, holding off McMillan, who's closed it back up, and here's McMillan right up alongside. Craig, these two riders are pushing it to the limit.
Oh, you bet, Pat. They're both putting on a great show for the crowd out there. And you know, McMurder's riding style has got so much smoother. And look at this, the veteran Frank Mrazek on his Ducati has retired, and Kevin Wilson with him. And you know, Pat, it's funny. We've not seen many Ducatis in this race series of ours.
Well, Mrazek was riding an older version of the Ducati machine. Their new 8-valve motor won the opening round of the World Superbike Championship over in England earlier this year, and we'll be seeing more of those machines certainly later on this year. Murphy leading that battle for fourth place. They're side by side, the two American riders, 43 Kevin Rensell, Mark Bugas number 105, both on Suzuki's, and then Gary Goodfellow number 100. Craig, I am amazed that Goody is able to stay up here with these full-blown Superbikes when he's running that stock RC30, and there he is, outbreaking both Rensell 43 and Bugas into the S's.
Well, he's having to ride the wheels off of that bike to stay up there, Pat, no doubt about it. And you know, the leader, McMurder, on the number 1 Honda, ran Yamahas for years. And I asked him a little earlier about the differences between the two bikes.
There are differences in the bikes, but they're still basically Superbikes. They all make about the same amount of power. It's just adjusting yourself to how each one works and turns and stuff, and different characteristics of that bike where it's stronger than other ones and whatnot. So I'm very happy with the Hondas. I think they're going to work real good for my riding style. I'm hoping to be in the winner's circle all season.
Right now, McMurder appears to be on his way to the winner's circle as he continues to lead. Gary Goodfellow inside of Norm Murphy. He'll pick up that fourth place position. There's Kevin Rensell, 43, and Mark Bugas, number 105. Goodfellow will lead them down into Moss Corner. Then it's Rensell, 43, who's moved ahead of Murphy, but they continue to switch it back and forth. So Ruben McMurder leads this Castrol Superbike Challenge, and we'll be back with the conclusion right after this.
We're nearing the end of this 20-lap Superbike feature, and here's Pat Gonzalez.
Thanks, Craig Hill. There is Norm Murphy, number 87, back into that fourth place position. And boy, have they been having a war here for the fourth place spot. Murphy moving up now to lap 124. Sergio Semenici, Rensell to the outside. They'll split the slower rider as they head down the hill into turn number 1. Murphy on the inside, Rensell outside, and it'll be Murph, the veteran here at Mosport, who will hold on to that fourth place position. But Craig, I think experience could be the deciding factor here between Rensell and Murphy. Murph's got a lot of experience here. Rensell racing for the very first time.
Well, if you'll notice a little bit, Pat, Rensell's bike is smoking just a little bit occasionally, and I don't know whether he's lost a bit of power.
This rider's had a great run here at Mosport. 19-year-old Tom Kipp from Cleveland, Ohio. But here is your leader, Ruben McMurder, through turn 10. He'll be coming up to take the blue and white last lap flag. And it has been a letter-perfect race for the Rothmans Honda machine. The battle for fourth into the S's. Rensell, the Suzuki showing the horsepower up the back straightaway, has pulled ahead of Murphy. And Murph is going to have to do it in the turns here now. They'll be getting the last lap flag. There is 3:32. Tom Kipp going through. He has got less than a lap to go. Then it is Rensell in fourth. 87 Murphy running fifth.
Well, it looks like McMurder's got this one in the bag, Pat, unless he completely falls off the bike. But he's a good rider and won't do that. He's very steady.
Well, Ruben's opened up quite a lead here on Paul McMillan. McMillan just not able to stay on the pace. There is the second place rider, Paul McMillan. He's had a good run on that Opus Ferrum Team Ciampini Suzuki, but well back of McMurder now as they head home to the checkered flag. That fourth place battle back into Moss Corner. There is Rensell, followed by Murphy.
And there's that puff of smoke. Look at it, Pat. Every time he lets off on the gas and opens the throttle, he gets that little puff of smoke again.
There is your leader, Ruben McMurder, through the S's now for the final time. Out of turn 9, just one corner to go as he brings the Rothmans Honda machine through turn 10. He'll be taking the checkered flag already, waving to the crowd. The big wheelie. McMurder takes the checkered flag for the win.
And a big win it is for McMurder, and here's second place. That's Paul McMillan. No trouble at all for Paul either.
And a splendid ride for Tom Kipp as he gets the checkered flag for third. Here's the battle for fourth. Rensell and Murphy side by side into the S's. Murphy will pass him going into turn 8. There's a slower rider between the two as they head through turn 9. It is Murphy by just the bike length. Rensell pulls right up alongside. Murphy will hold him off. The checkered flag is out. Here is Murphy and Rensell. Again, they'll run wheel to wheel. And at the line, it'll be Murphy, I believe, got him by about half a wheel length.
And there are the final standings, with McMurder picking up the top points towards the CMA Championship. It's been a great day for the U.S. and Canadian entrants, and we're all looking forward to 1989 here when the World Superbike Championship teams visit Canada.
That's it from Mosport. I'm Pat Gonzalez for Craig Hill.
Next week on Wide World of Sports, Pat Gonzalez and Craig Hill report on the Castrol Canadian Superbike Championships from Saint-Air, Quebec.
This is Saint-Air International Speedway near Saint-Pie, Quebec, and round one of the Castrol Motorplan Superbike Challenge. Hello, everybody. I'm Pat Gonzalez, and welcome to our third year of televising Canada's best motorcycle road racing. With me is Craig Hill of Castrol, and Craig, the prize and contingency money in this year's series could make one of these riders a member of the rich and famous.
Well, I don't think any one rider is going to get rich this year, Pat, because they're all going fast, but famous, yes. If you look at how Ruben McMurder's been riding up today, and if you look how Goodfellow's coming along, and these guys are riding internationally, and they're showing that Canadians can run out there with the very best of them, but they're all going to go away with a few bucks too, because this series this year is worth well over $450,000 just for the 6 races, and if you want to take in last week's race at Mosport, they're up over $500,000. So these guys are racing for big bucks this year, and I know some of them are going to be real international stars in the future.
Well, our series this year consists of 6 events. The season opener here at Saint-Air, then it's out east to Atlantic Motorsport Park north of Halifax. Round number 3 will be at Shannonville Motorsport Park, and then the riders head west for the Western Swing in Calgary at Race City Speedway. Then it's on to Vancouver at Westwood Motorsport Park. And the final race will be back at Shannonville Motorsport Park, where the number 1 plate in the Canadian Superbike Championship will probably be decided.
And you know what this means? As we go across the country, we get local riders from each of the regions, plus U.S. riders coming into the series, which makes the series bigger and better and gives it that international flavor and makes the series the prime series in North America. And this is what we've worked for so many years.
Well, some Canadian and American riders had a chance to check their new machinery at Mosport Park last week. Paul McMillan on the Team Champini Suzuki and Ruben McMurder on the Rothmans Honda waged a tremendous battle in the Superbike final. At the checkered flag, it was McMurder taking a big win on the 750 Interceptor, McMillan coming home in second. Riders such as Michel Mercier, Tommy Douglas, Steve Dick passed up the Mosport event to prepare here for the season opener of the National Championships at Saint-Air. So with all of the best riders in the new machinery here this weekend, many feel that the outcome could be a little different than it was a week ago at Mosport Park.
And one reason why that outcome could be different is this new Suzuki that Michel Mercier will ride. And although it has shown great potential, I don't think that his tuner, Mike Crompton, has quite got it dialed in yet, as it goes through scrutineering by race official John Bragg. And here's Pat with more on the new machinery.
Here at the opening round of the Canadian National Superbike Championships, there's an awful lot of interest in the new 1988 racing machinery and the riders who have changed from what they raced a year ago. This is Steve Dick's Suzuki. He was Honda mounted a year ago, but he'll be on the latest version of Suzuki's GSXR 750 that has taken Michel Mercier to 2 consecutive number 1 plates in Canadian Superbike Championships. Yamaha hasn't won a number 1 plate since 1985 when Art Robbins did it on an old TZ750 Yamaha. Yamaha's hopes this year lie with Tommy Douglas, who'll be riding this 1988 Yamaha FZR 750. It has a couple of interesting modifications. They have put air ducts here to ram more air into the carburetors to perhaps boost the horsepower a little bit. And Tommy will also be carrying our Sony Handycam that'll give us a brand new perspective on Superbike racing this year. The name Kawasaki was synonymous with Superbike winning back in the early 80s, but they haven't scored a major victory in a number of years now. This year, the Big K Kawasaki have regrouped with veteran rider Norm Murphy heading up their Superbike program. Their Ninja 750 is still going through the development curve, but with help from Rob Muzzy, longtime American tuner in California, as well as a strong crew here in Canada, they're ready to challenge for the number 1 plate. Honda last year was backed by Rothmans. their hopes and efforts did not materialize into what they had hoped in winning the #1 plate. They have regrouped under veteran rider Ruben McMurder on a brand new Rothmans Honda effort. The bike Gary Goodfellow will be racing in this year's series is the most talked about motorcycle to come along in years, the Honda RC30. It has a redesigned V4 engine that puts out more horsepower, but perhaps the most unique feature about the machine is a single swing arm that was developed from endurance racing and made part of this production motorcycle. It costs about $15,000, and from there, a special factory Superbike kit is added to boost the horsepower. Other modifications required to make the motorcycle truly competitive. But because it's a brand new motorcycle, a lot of tinkering and playing and development work will go on with the machine throughout 1988. Whether or not it'll be competitive right off the bat and Goodfellow will be able to battle in there with the likes of Mercier and McMurder and Murphy for the #1 plate, we'll see over the next few weeks. We'll be back with more from Sanair International Speedway and the Castrol Motoplan Superbike Challenge in a moment. Welcome back to Sanair International Speedway and the Castrol Motoplan Challenge. Our first race today is the Pro 750 production class. These motorcycles come box stock off the dealer's showroom. The riders aren't allowed to modify the engine at all and must run a treaded street-legal tire. With the machine so closely matched, it ultimately becomes a test of rider ability. Rider number 24, Ruben McMurder, has qualified on the pole position aboard his Honda RC30. Michel Mercier will carry the #1 plate on his production Suzuki, as will number 101, Steve Dick, who has also put his Suzuki on the front row. And Tommy Douglas, number 2 on a Yamaha, completes the front row for our event. Now here's Craig Hill.
The riders are set to start this production event that begins with a standing start quarter-mile drag race to the first corner.
Riders off the line. Tommy Douglas, number 2. Steve Dick, number 101, running side by side. They'll spread it 5 wide. Now bottleneck down into that hairpin turn. Riders jockeying for position. And we've got riders going wide. Riders tucked in out of the hairpin. Up front as they head for the chicane here on lap 1, it's Michel Mercier, number 1, out in front, side by side for second. It is 94, Richard Greff in the number 2 spot, then 97, Miguel Duhamel on that bright lime green machine. There's Greff to the inside of Mercier going into the bowl, but he wasn't able to get around the defending Canadian champion. Mercier, who began his racing career on production machinery, no stranger here to a 750 Suzuki. Off of turn 7 in the bowl, they'll come under the bridge here and on the front straightaway. It's Mercier leading, number 94, Greff in the second place spot. 97, it's still Miguel Duhamel up there in the third place spot. Here's Duhamel again trying the outbreaking maneuver at the top of the straightaway going into the hairpin, but could not get around.
Well, Pat, this is proof positive that production racing this year is going to be a hot item because we've got so many pros that have come from the Superbike back into production racing. It's going to be an interesting season.
Well, there is a surprise. 94, Richard Greff running out in front. I don't think anybody would have given the nod to Greff. But this second-year pro rider, a top amateur a couple of years ago, is really putting on a tremendous ride. He made a beautiful pass on the inside of Mercier there going into the bowl as they come on the straightaway. Greff will lead it. Mercier in second. Duhamel right there in third. McMurder moving up now to challenge Douglas for that fourth place position. They're side by side on the straightaway, 3 wide into the hairpin. Greff holds onto the lead. Mercier right there in second. Here's Duhamel on the inside of Mercier. He will pick up that second place spot. And the partisan crowd here at Sanair loving it. Quebec riders running up front in the top 3 positions.
Well, Pat, let's not forget about the guys just behind them because McMurder has been really riding smooth this year. And I'm sure that he's going to get up with that front-running bunch very, very quickly here.
Richard Greff, your race leader, as they run it through that stock car oval that's part of the road course here at Sanair. Miguel Duhamel in second, Michel Mercier third. There's Ruben McMurder. He has worked his way up into the fourth place spot, and Mercier makes the move up to the outside of Duhamel. He'll retake that second place position. Onto the straightaway, the riders will actually try to run right in the tire tracks of each other and draft here on this drag strip straightaway. Mercier picks up the draft on number 94. Greff going into the hairpin. He's got the lead. Mercier drifts out a little bit wide. Greff to the inside will retake top spot. What action there, Craig Hill, at the hairpin.
Oh, you bet. And look at McMurder up to third now. He's on his high horse now, Pat. He's going to be on his way. I'm sure of that.
At the chicane, side by side, Richard Greff will retake top spot. as they break to go back into the stock car oval. Number 1, Mercier right there in second. The third place rider, as you said, 24, McMurder now is on the march. He has put that Honda RC30 into the third place position, and he is closing on the front-running 2 Suzukis of Richard Greff and Michel Mercier. Just a couple of bike lengths, they come under the bridge. Again, Mercier up on the outside will retake first. Onto the straightaway, Greff, and there's a rider crashing at the hairpin. It is rookie Steve Moxey, number 18. He looks as though he'll be okay. Mercier and Greff still going at it. There is McMurder. He continues to close, and Mercier got into a bit of a wobble. He gathered it back in, pulls on a top spot. Greff still trying to chase him down. Back into the oval. Number 24, McMurder, is closed on Mercier and Greff. It is now a 3-rider race. Tommy Douglas just a few bike lengths back. He is right there in 4th. And number 97, Miguel Duhamel, back in the 5th place spot. There you can see the front-running 5 riders and the fans on their feet watching a tremendous Pro 750 production race here at Sanair. Single file on the straightaway. McMurder now pulls out of the draft, side by side with Mercier into the hairpin. But again, Mercier and Greff will hold him off under braking. McMurder back down to the inside. He'll take that 2nd place position away from Greff. It has been back and forth here throughout this one. The riders swapping positions back and forth up front, out of the chicane. Mercier, your leader, 24. McMurder in 2nd, side by side for 3rd. As Greff holds on to that 3rd place position, Tommy Douglas, number 2, runs in 4th, and then it's Miguel Duhamel, number 97, back there in the 5th place spot. Gary Goodfellow, who had to start right in the back, Craig Hill's done a good job. He has worked his way up into the top 10, but Gary having his problems, and there is McMurder taking the lead away from Mercier with a beautiful pass to the inside. The blue and white last lap flag is out. The train of 5 production machines now split apart as each rider looking for his fast line into the hairpin, and McMurder will still hold on to the lead. Greff right there in 2nd, now to the inside. Mercier will pick up that 2nd place spot as Greff left the opening to the inside. Mercier pounces on it to pick up the position. Out of the chicane, Ruben McMurder on the Honda. Number 1, Mercier right there in 2nd on the Suzuki. Then it is Greff, 94. And number 2, Tommy Douglas, really having a war here for that 3rd place position. Douglas on the Yamaha. And then number 97 there in that lime green Kawasaki is Miguel Duhamel. Less than a lap to go, just 1 corner coming on the straightaway. Number 24, Ruben McMurder, makes a quick check over the left shoulder, and he will win it as the checkered flag is out. McMurder, your winner.
And as usual, the crowd just loves it, Pat. A terrific pro production race at Sanair. And here are the final standings with fastest qualifier Ruben McMurder winning it on the last lap. And it's great to see new names up there with Greff, Duhamel, and Mike Griffiths showing well against the veterans.
And we'll be back with the Superbike race from Sanair, Quebec after this. Welcome back to the Castrol Motoplan Superbike Challenge as we get ready to start the feature race for points towards the Canadian Championship.
And here's the front row of the grid with Ruben McMurder taking the pole position, and next to him is Vancouver's Steve Dick on a Suzuki.
To his left is Montreal's Tommy Douglas, who will be carrying the onboard camera, and on the outside is number 11, Gary Goodfellow.
And we're looking forward to some exciting video from that Sony Handycam, Pat, as Eddie Brunet, he has a little bit of a problem on the line there. I hope he gets going.
Looks like they've got it corrected as Tom Atkins throws the white flag. The riders rocket off the line. Derek Medaglia to the outside. Gary Goodfellow to the inside. Tommy Douglas right in behind those 2 riders. He runs 3rd on the straightaway. The riders break going into the hairpin. There is Medaglia up on the outside, just cutting right across the front wheel of Tommy Douglas. Gary Goodfellow to the inside, up into the 2nd place spot. Some tremendous pictures there from the Sony Handycam as we're on lap number 1 through the chicane. 62, Derek Medaglia, your leader. 11, Gary Goodfellow in 2nd. Number 2, Tommy Douglas right there in the 3rd place spot. The riders through that left-hand turn 5 into the stock car oval. It is Goodfellow who has taken over the lead from Medaglia. Douglas, number 2, back there in the 3rd place position. At 24, Ruben McMurder to the inside of Tommy Douglas. There is McMurder. He will pick up that 3rd place position as he now has his sights set on Medaglia, number 62. And further up the straightaway, there you see the leader, Gary Goodfellow. Ruben McMurder, number 24, in the draft now of Medaglia. He'll pull to the inside, trying to pull the slingshot at the end of the straightaway, but Medaglia will hold him off going into the hairpin. Gary Goodfellow, number 11, your leader. McMurder getting through on the inside of Medaglia in a 2nd. There is Goodfellow on that Honda RC30, leading here on lap number 2. Out of the chicane, Goodfellow your leader. McMurder in second, Medaglia third. On the inside, Steve Dick will pick up that third place position. What a move by Dick. And you saw it as it happened, cutting right across in front of Tommy Douglas to take over the third place spot. And now McMurder to the inside of Goodfellow. Underneath the bridge they'll come, and Goodfellow will shut the door on McMurder.
Well, you can see just how McMurder's riding this year, Pat. He's an awful lot smoother, but he's up against tough competition with Gary Goodfellow because he's very, very experienced.
Side by side at the top of the straightaway, into the hairpin, and again McMurder right alongside of Goodfellow. He would not let him by. They're just a bike length apart as they rocket out of the hairpin. Gary Goodfellow really pushing that Honda RC30 to stay out in front. McMurder number 24 in second. Tommy Douglas number 2 back there in third, and Douglas has got some company with him as the riders once again turn left into the stock car oval. Number 11, Gary Goodfellow your leader. 24, McMurder in second, and again McMurder pulls to the inside. He will take the lead. Ruben McMurder has put the Rothmans Honda Interceptor out in front. As number 11, Goodfellow in second. Here's Steve Dick and Tommy Douglas. They're having a war back there for that third place spot.
Well, Pat, I asked Tommy Douglas in third place, giving us those great onboard shots, if the camera had any effect at all on his riding style, whether he thought about it even.
No, I've tried to block that from my mind as much as possible. I know it's an expensive little piece of equipment, but I'm trying not to think about that. If I fall down, I fall down. I hope it'll provide some good footage, and hopefully during the last couple of laps of the race, I'll be able to have footage of just clear track ahead.
Well, Tommy's not quite there yet as number 11, Gary Goodfellow, and number 24, Ruben McMurder are still in front of him. 101, Steve Dick closing on Tommy Douglas. There is Goodfellow just ahead of Douglas as they run it back through the bowl here. And a Goodfellow continues to lose ground now to number 24, McMurder. 101, Steve Dick right there with Tommy Douglas. That is really tightening up, Craig. That race back there for that second place spot.
And that's Goodfellow just ahead of number 2, Douglas. And he's riding hurt today, Pat. He had a tremendous get-off at the hairpin in yesterday's production heat race. And here's video of that accident.
Rookie Kenny Cooper locks up the front end, runs into Goodfellow on the right side. Mario Duhamel, 157 there in the white leathers, has nowhere to go. He slams into Gary on the left side, and all 3 riders and machines go sliding off the racetrack at the hairpin. The hay bales doing their job, and we asked Gary if the pain affected his riding.
Well, I'm hurting, but, you know, once the adrenaline starts pumping, you know, this is my job to race motorcycles, man, and once the adrenaline starts pumping, then it seems to go away, at least for a little while. It might get worse in the 20-lap race. I just have to try my best and see how it goes.
While it's not going well for this man, rookie Mike McNeil of West Hill, as he has crashed going into the bowl. There's your leader, 24, Ruben McMurder. Another West Hill rider, Art Robbins, has retired with mechanical problems on his Suzuki. There's that race for third, really heating up. Paul McMillan, number 9, about to join Tommy Douglas, number 2, and Steve Dick, number 101, as those 3 riders move on to the straightaway. They go by Gary Goodfellow. Goodfellow slowing on the straightaway. You're aboard that bike there for a moment for some spectacular shots from the Sony Handycam, as now Tommy Douglas, number 2, will take over that second place position.
Well, you can see Goodfellow looking back behind there, Pat. I think he's got a tire going soft because it's not like Goody to drop off the pace like that.
Goody being shuffled back into that 6th place position. There's your leader, 24, McMurder. Second is number 2, Tommy Douglas. Third, number 9, Paul McMillan. And number 1 now, Michel Mercier, moving up to challenge into that 4th place position is Steve Dick, but Mercier right behind him.
Well, as they come around this corner, they come onto the straightaway underneath the bridge, Pat, and it always gets a little slippery just as you come on the straightaway from the drag racing that takes place here at Sanair. And you know, that bike of McMurder's this year has got such tremendous horsepower, I don't think they'll pull him down the straightaway.
Into the hairpin, Steve Dick makes the move to the inside, and he hits Paul McMillan. Dick on the inside, and McMillan collide. As McMillan crashes, Dick stays upright and continues, and there is Tommy Douglas running in third as Michel Mercier has moved through into the 2nd place spot. But an unfortunate crash there. Here is Mercier running just ahead of Douglas through turn 6 in a ball, and Mercier has crashed right in front of Douglas. The machine into the hay bales. Mercier goes slamming in there. He hops over the wall. Mercier appears to be okay. Here's Michel hopping back over the wall. Is he going to try to get on the bike? No, he runs right in front of Norm Murphy.
Kind of a dangerous move, Pat, but we'll be back with more from Sanair in a moment. And Superbike Challenge. This is round 1 of the 6 races across Canada to determine the Canadian #1 plate holder. And right now, we're on the last lap, and we've lost half this field in an accident-filled race.
No doubt about it, Craig. It's been tough on rider and machinery as number 24, Ruben McMurder, leads with 101, Steve Dick second, followed by Tommy Douglas in third. Norm Murphy, 87, is fourth. 62, Derek Medalia, fifth. And 97, young Miguel Duhamel in sixth. There is the picture from the Sony Handycam as Tommy Douglas is on his last lap. There is your leader, Ruben McMurder, on the Rothmans Honda Interceptor.
Well, a great ride for Ruben, Pat, but the guy I've been impressed with today is young Miguel Duhamel because he's a real comer and he rides like his father very, very aggressively.
There's your leader, Ruben McMurder, through turn 7. Then it is 101, Steve Dick, in that second place spot. These positions pretty well strung out now as they come home to the checkered flag. Out of the final turn, McMurder brings his machine onto the straightaway, pops a little wheelie. There's the checkered flag, and McMurder has won this opening Canadian Superbike Championship round.
And a double payday for McMurder. And there are the final standings, with McMurder winning both of our televised races and the qualifying race giving him 17 points in the chase for the Canadian Superbike Championship. Here's Pat with the presentation.
Alan LaBrosse of Race will present the third place plaque to Tommy Douglas.
Congratulations. Thank you, Alan.
The second place finisher all the way from Vancouver into second here today, Steve Dick. And your Superbike winner today here at San Air on the Rothmans Honda, Ruben McMurder. That's it from San Air, Quebec. A big day for Ruben McMurder and the Rothmans Honda team. And we'll see you next week from Atlantic Motorsport Park in Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia. I'm Pat Gonzalez for Craig Hill. So long until next time. This is Atlantic Motorsport Park in Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia, site of the Rothmans Motor Plant Atlantic Superbike National, presented by Castrol Canada. Hello, everybody. I'm Pat Gonzalez, and welcome to round number 2 of Canada's National Superbike Series. With me is Craig Hill, and Craig, you're no stranger to this twisty 1.6-mile Atlantic Motorsport Park circuit.
Oh, for sure, Pat. As a matter of fact, I was here the very first day that they put the pavement down. And as a matter of fact, myself and Bob Hanna from the CASC painted the yellow lines on this racetrack. And, you know, I've raced here both in the wet and I've raced here in the cold and damp like it is today. And, you know, these guys today are faced with some very special problems because what happens on this racetrack is that the puddles lay in little groups all the way around the racetrack. So when these guys are going around there very fast, and if the rain picks up again, there'll be all these little puddles that not only will they have to stay clear of, but they got to be careful of because if they're on the outside line or something like that, they hit one and zip, the bike's gone from underneath them. But we've got good riders here. They've had a great practice day, and it looks as though all the records are going to fall wet or dry, Pat.
Well, some of the riders have already had their problems here at Atlantic Motorsport Park. Steve Dick, number 101, crashed his Suzuki Superbike in an early morning warm-up session, and he's been repairing that as well as running other qualifying heats. The Pro 750cc production qualifying heat was an outstanding one as Steve Dick and Tommy Douglas dueled for 5 laps, with Steve Dick coming out the winner and taking the pole position and the 2 extra championship points. Steve Dick was unable to repair his Superbike for the qualifying race, and thus pitted his production machine against the Superbikes of McMurder, Goodfellow, Douglas, Mercier, and McMillan. Almost unbelievably, Steve Dick led the first lap, but it wasn't long before the awesome Honda power of Ruben McMurder's Superbike came through into the lead, with Gary Goodfellow right behind in second. McMurder won the qualifier. He'll sit on the pole position and picked up those 2 valuable championship points.
That's right, Pat. And yesterday was a great day for Ruben McMurder and Steve Dick. And to date, our national point standings after our first round at San Air look like this. Ruben McMurder has 17, Steve Dick has 12, Tommy Douglas 10, Norm Murphy 8, and then the rest down to Leclerc with a single point.
The opening round at Sanair was an easy win for Rothman's Honda rider number 24, Ruben McMurder, as he outclassed the field on his Honda 750 Interceptor. Paul McMillan, number 9, had a disappointing opening round as he came off in a big way at the hairpin when hit by Steve Dick while running a strong third. Defending Canadian champion Michel Mercier low-sided his new Suzuki in the bowl while running in second to McMurder. We asked the popular Michel Mercier if the setback at Sanair has changed his race strategy for the rest of the series.
Yes, it does a little bit. I came at Sanair with a lot of pressure, and right now I can say it's even more pressure. But it turned to be the other way. Now, because I have no points, I'll just go race by race and one at a time and see what happened. Because, starting with no point after the first event is for sure not something that pump you up. So I'll just take it one by one.
Michel Mercier will have his hands full today as Ruben McMurder has his sights set on that Canadian Superbike Championship. Some of those onboard pictures you saw were provided by this man, Tommy Douglas, on his Yamaha FZR 750. And this camera, the Sony Handycam. Tommy, having seen the pictures, are you surprised just how far you're leaning your Superbike over?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. The crew and I had a chance to view the pictures last night from Sanair, and we were just really amazed with it. It provides such an accurate perspective of the speed that we're able to attain and the lean angles that today's tires are able to achieve. With the Metzler slicks and the Pirelli production tires we have, we're really able to lean the bike over pretty far. And the viewers also have to understand when they're watching it that when the rider is out there and the bike is leaned over like that, he tries to maintain his head equal so that the horizon is always level.
Thank you, Tommy. We'll see how Tommy Douglas and all of the other riders perform in the first of our 2 races, the Pro 750 production final that's coming up next. You're watching the Rothmans Motorplan Atlantic National Superbike race from Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia.
If you went to the trouble of making Ovation, you would take the taste of the freshest mint, or the flavor of luscious oranges, or the richest coffee, and balance that taste perfectly with dark chocolate. However, if you're the type of person who would go to the trouble of making Ovation, you're probably already serving them.
This is a pile of salt, the kind that devours cars. Inside it is a Chrysler, the car that revels in it. That's because every Chrysler is made with galvanized steel. And that's why we cover our cars with one of the world's longest anti-corrosion warranties. 7 years or 160,000 kilometers on every single one of them. Chrysler, changing the landscape.
Can your motor oil take the heat? When today's engines reach high running temperatures, motor oil can thin out, break down, and leave engine surfaces unprotected. But Castrol XLR has been engineered to maintain a lubricating film, even at extreme engine temperatures. At Castrol, we believe if you can't take the heat, get out of the engine. Castrol XLR, the oil engineered for today's cars. Look for Castrol XLR at these leading retailers.
Welcome back to the Rothmans Motorplan Atlantic Superbike National. They're lining the bikes up for the Pro 750 production race. There's a lot of concern about the racetrack. It was wet earlier, it started to dry, the racing line is dry, but off of that, it's still pretty wet and slick. The riders will have to watch where they're running on this twisty Atlantic Motorsport Park circuit. Now here's Craig Hill.
You're right, Pat. I talked to Paul McMillan earlier, and he said there was about an 18-inch dry line at the critical part of each corner. And if they miss it, they're in big trouble.
McMillan with the wheelie as the field heads down into turn number 1. You can see 4-5 wide through that first turn. Michel Mercier, number 1, grabs the lead. 101, Steve Dick in second. Paul McMillan runs third. 99, John Ramsey. The local rider runs in fourth, and then back in fifth on that lime green Kawasaki is Miguel Duhamel. Pretty well single file through this section of the racetrack as Steve Dick tries to make a move up onto Michel Mercier, number 1. As the riders head out of this right-hand turn up into the roller coaster, it's still Mercier leading, Dick in second, McMillan third, Ramsey fourth, followed by Miguel Duhamel fifth, and Gary Goodfellow in the 6th place position. Steve Dick will take the lead here away from Michel Mercier as they got onto this twisty back straightaway. Steve Dick moves around Michel Mercier, and here's Mercier. He'll retake the lead as they come through turn number 10. Steve Dick had the lead, but only for a couple of corners. It's Michel Mercier back out in front. Steve Dick 101 in second. McMillan, number 9, now will move around into that second place spot. A nice move by Paul McMillan going in at turn 1. He got around Steve Dick as we watch the battle into the hairpin. Number 1, Mercier, your leader. 9, Paul McMillan in second. Ramsey now has moved around into third. Dick runs fourth. Goodfellow up into fifth. And on that lime green Kawasaki is Miguel Duhamel in sixth. But the riders have been swapping positions back and forth. Into the roller coaster here once again. It's Michel Mercier, number 1, leading. Steve Dick, number 101, having a war back there for that fourth place position as Gary Goodfellow works up onto his rear tire. Here's your leader, Mercier, number 1, as he starts to stretch it out just a little bit. Part of the great crowd here at Atlantic Motorsport Park watching a great Pro 750 production race. The front-running 6 riders are tied together as they come out of the final turn. Back up across the start-finish line. Mercier, your leader, 9. McMillan in second. 101. Steve Dick has now worked his way back into the third place spot. Mercier here on the Suzuki. McMillan on the new Honda RC30. Then Dick on another Suzuki and side-by-side for fourth. Goodfellow and Ramsey banging fairings as they run it out of the hairpin. And Gary Goodfellow will hold on to that fourth place position. And around the outside of Ramsey, it'll be Duhamel into the fifth place spot. Craig, we are seeing an incredible battle here aboard these production machines.
Oh, you bet, Pat. You got to remember, Gary Goodfellow's up on his production 600 bike. He's not riding his RC30 in this one, and he's doing a fantastic job of staying up there.
Gary showing a little bit of lack of horsepower there on the back section of the racetrack. He's not quite able to stay with Duhamel's 750 Kawasaki, and consequently has dropped back a spot. There is Paul McMillan holding on to that second place position, but boy, you could see the suspension on his Honda RC30 working through that bumpy section of the racetrack. 101, Dick in second, Duhamel on that green machine up into the fourth place spot, and here's Duhamel and Dick side by side into the bottom of turn 1, and Dick just would not let Duhamel get by number 11, Goodfellow, right there in the fifth place spot. The riders again out of the hairpin. You can see the interval, just a matter of a couple of bike lengths separating these 5 riders. As they head out through turn number 3, it's still 1, Michel Mercier leading. Number 9, Paul McMillan in second. Oh, and McMillan has crashed. McMillan goes sliding off the racetrack.
And that's just what Paul was talking about before this race, Pat. Here's a slow motion of that fall, and if you look, he just got a little bit off the line there, grabbed the front brake, and look at the spray coming off his wheels there.
That's got to be a bitter disappointment for Paul McMillan because he was running a superb race in second. That's Miguel Duhamel, son of past Canadian champ Yvon Duhamel, running down Steve Dick for second. And I asked him if having his father on the team was a bonus.
Well, sometimes it gives you a plus. Sometimes it's a disadvantage because you got to live up to the reputation of Duhamel, you know. And it's always hard now. It's the hardest even with my brother and all that. So I just try not to mind it. He's a big hand, yeah. He gives me a good hand, you know. He says I gotta go faster. That's what I try to do.
Well, Miguel Duhamel trying to go just a little bit faster here and close on Steve Dick for that second place position. Gary Goodfellow right behind in the fourth place spot. Then John Ramsey in fifth. There you can see your top 5. And then back in sixth, it's Clyde McDonald, Ruben McMurder in seventh, Tommy Douglas, Michael Griffiths, and then Denny Royer. You're looking at the battle for 11th. Jean Paquette, number 7, just ahead of Dwight McKinley, the Winnipeg, Manitoba rider, and Mark Green.
Well, it's interesting, Pat, to see how far back McMurder and Douglas are running. You know, local knowledge of this track when it's wet must have an awful lot to do with it, I'm sure, but maybe they just don't have the right tire combination.
A rider with the right combination there is Gary Goodfellow as he tries to chase down Miguel Duhamel, and you're looking at a 4-way battle for the third place spot. Miguel Duhamel on the green machine holds that third place position right now. Goodfellow, number 11, right behind him, then John Ramsey, and then Clyde McDonald. So the 2 Nova Scotia riders really giving Duhamel all he can handle here for third.
And there's the last lap flag out, Pat, and that's Norm Murphy on the Kawasaki. And you know, he hasn't quite come to terms with this bumpy, twisty circuit either. And you know, Norm's the kind of guy who gets on and goes fast. I don't understand it.
There is number 99, John Ramsey, to the outside of Gary Goodfellow, side by side out of the hairpin. And Goodfellow will hold on to fourth. Ramsey right there in fifth, and Clyde McDonald runs in the sixth place spot. Mercier, number 1, your leader, 101. Steve Dick in second, 97. Duhamel third, and there is Clyde McDonald going inside of Ramsey. He'll pick up the fifth place spot as he tries to chase down Gary Goodfellow now for fourth. Less than a lap to go. Michel Mercier, the leader. Further back in the pack, Paquette still being hounded by McKinley, Mark Green, and Michael White for that 12th place spot. Michel Mercier, just a few corners to go as he works it into the carousel now for the final time. There you can see Steve Dick. He has closed it up. Number 97, Miguel Duhamel in third, and 106, that is. It is Clyde McDonald now. It's up into the fourth place spot. Just one corner to go. Michel Mercier out of the final corner. He looks to the checkered flag that's out at the line. As Mercier brings the Suzuki to the stripe, he will win it.
And you know, Pat, that's going to do a lot for Michel Mercier's confidence. You know he's had problems with his new bike this year. He's got it sorted out now. And there are the final standings in our first race today. And we'll be back with more championship motorcycle racing from Shubenacadie right after this.
Been riding these babies for years. Ford pickup seen me to my wedding, my work, and a lot of tough times. Now that's a tough act to follow.
It's 3:42, but afternoon practice means afternoon hunger.
If I'm dancing and I'm hungry, I eat a Snickers, and then I can dance again.
The first step is eating the Snickers bar and getting rid of my hunger so I can get on to the next step, which is playing ball.
You know, my mom will keep Snickers in the cabinet in the kitchen, you know, and I'll go get one, and it fills me up, push me through till dinner.
Snickers, crunchy peanuts, peanut butter nougat, caramel, and milk chocolate.
I'm so hungry.
Packed with peanuts, Snickers really satisfies.
Snickers really satisfies you.
Elaine Middleton, risk management analyst, condition, headache.
A really nagging, hurtful headache, right? It's like, seems on both sides.
Why haven't you tried Tylenol?
I'm not convinced that Tylenol would work because I haven't taken it.
Clinical studies prove Tylenol has the strength to deliver effective relief, and Tylenol caplets are easy to swallow. How do you feel?
My headache is 100% gone. Tylenol caplets were really, really easy to swallow. I will buy the Tylenol caplets.
Welcome back to Atlantic Motorsport Park in Nova Scotia. They're lining the Superbikes up for our 15-lap feature race. This will be a test of rider stamina, as the riders will have very little time out there on this twisty, tight circuit. There are no long straightaways to get a rest. They're going to be constantly working up and down through the gears, leaning the motorcycles, throwing them right and left. Now here's Craig Hill with the starting grid.
Well, there's not too many surprises on the front row, with Ruben McMurder taking the pole position and Vancouver's Gary Goodfellow right beside him. Honda versus Honda, Pat. Beside Gary is Suzuki-mounted Michel Mercier, winner of the Pro 750 production race. Next to him, to complete the four-rider front row, is Montreal's Tommy Douglas on a Yamaha.
In row number 2, it'll be Steve Dick, Paul McMillan, Miguel Duhamel, McDonald, Murphy, Ramsey, and Paquette in row 3. Medaglia, Robbins, and Griffiths make up row 4. McKinley, Leclerc, Kea, and Brunet. Pilon, Kowalski, and McLeod in row 6. And in the final row, Glenn Friend and Eric Viel. Riders revving the engines up, looking for the green flag. There it is. Mercier, Goodfellow, McMurder, in number 2, Tommy Douglas dive into turn 1, and it'll be number 11, Gary Goodfellow with the lead. You're on board Tommy Douglas' machine as he looks at the front-running 3 riders just ahead of him. That is Gary Goodfellow, number 11, followed by 24, Ruben McMurder in second, number 1, Michel Mercier third, then Tommy Douglas on the number 2 Yamaha. Opening lap, and the riders go single file here now, and it is McMurder on the inside of Goodfellow. He grabs the lead going into the roller coaster. Ruben McMurder has put the Rothmans Honda Interceptor into the lead, going around Gary Goodfellow. It is Michel Mercier back in third. Number 2, Tommy Douglas running fourth, and Steve Dick now moves up the challenge as the riders head along the back section of the racetrack again. The beautiful shots here from the Sony Handycam from aboard Tommy Douglas's machine as he runs back in the fourth place position, looking up ahead on the racetrack to the leader, Ruben McMurder, followed by 11, Gary Goodfellow and Michel Mercier in third. The riders come out of the final turn now here to complete lap 1 as they're on the start-finish straightaway, and you can see the 3 riders running ahead of Tommy Douglas to the bottom of turn 1. Ruben McMurder by about 5 or 6 bike lengths. Gary Goodfellow right there in second, and then Michel Mercier, the defending Canadian champion, runs back into third place spot. Through the slowest corner on this racetrack, that hairpin, it's still McMurder, followed by Goodfellow, Mercier in third, and rider number 101, Steve Dick, now moving up to challenge Tommy Douglas for the fourth place spot.
Well, it's interesting to see the power that Ruben had right off the bat, Pat. He sure jumped out into a quick lead. But, you know, I think that Goodfellow's just sitting back there watching them, because I know that these guys are going to have a good race today.
You just saw from the onboard camera Steve Dick slipping around Tommy Douglas to pick up that fourth place position, as Douglas being dropped back into fifth now. Paul McMillan runs in the sixth place spot. Some great shots here. You can see just how far over the riders are leaning these motorcycles through the turns as they come back up into the start-finish straightaway. Ruben McMurder, number 24, your leader, 11. Gary Goodfellow in second, and look at this race for third. Dick, number 101, Douglas, number 2, are all over Michel Mercier for the third place position, and Paul McMillan now makes it a 4-way battle for the third place spot. Then it's back to the 2 Nova Scotia riders, Ramsey and McDonald, as they battle for 7th. Michel Mercier being reeled in here now by Steve Dick, number 101. Douglas right there on the number 2 Yamaha, and then number 9, Paul McMillan on the Team Champini Suzuki. That is a great 4-way battle for third, but up front, it is still McMurder and Goodfellow battling for the lead, and they're pulling away from the third place rider Mercier. On the back straightaway, that's a twisty, turning back chute here at Atlantic Motorsport Park. 101 Steve Dick working on Michel Mercier for that third place position, and you can see that Douglas and McMillan have both closed up as well. You're on board Tommy Douglas's Yamaha, the Sony Handycam, providing these pictures as he is in the thick of that battle for third. And there is Miguel Duhamel. He was running at about 8th. He's off the racetrack. He's going to try to get it back onto the pavement.
There are the standings, and I guess the way McMurder and Goodfellow are riding, I don't think Mercier, Dick, or Douglas are going to chase them down. One name missing from the top 10, however, is West Hills Art Robbins on the CRV Suzuki. Art's had his problems today and is back in 13th, Pat.
There's the race for third with Steve Dick running with Michel Mercier. You're with the leader, Ruben McMurder, and I asked him if running with Gary Goodfellow would be a difficult task today.
I feel comfortable about Gary being there. I think that I can stay just enough ahead, but anything can happen. And being tough to pass here, getting a bad start and stuff, and if Gary's get a good start, I could really have to work if he got out front. We're only talking a difference of tenths of seconds between us. So making that up over 15 laps it can be quite a job. So I think you're going to see Gary and I at it quite a bit during the race, and I suspect Michel will be in there too.
Michel is in there, but he's involved in the battle for third place with Steve Dick, Tommy Douglas, and Paul McMillan. A superb 4-rider scrap for that third place spot. Jean Paquette running just ahead of number 87, Norm Murphy. They're running in 10th and 11th. Murphy and Paquette both off the pace a little bit here this afternoon as they work it through and into the roller coaster. Just 5 bike lengths separating those 2 riders.
And that battle for the lead continues between McMurder and Goodfellow. And I asked Goodfellow what it takes to pass a rider like McMurder.
Well, Ruben's running really well, and his bike's running really well. And of course, it's a very tight, twisty track, and it's rough, and you can't afford to make one mistake. And if I'm behind Ruben at the start, then I'll be waiting on him to make the mistake. If he doesn't make the mistake towards the end, then I'm just going to have to go in there and outbrake him into the tighter turns and so on. Spectacular track to watch, this track. It's a lot of hills and undulations in it, so you can see a lot of good wheelies and bikes stepping out all the time coming out of the tight corners and so on. Need a lot of traction for this track, so it's going to be a really exciting race tomorrow. I can't wait.
The race for third place continues to heat up. Michel Mercier just ahead of Steve Dick. You're on board Tommy Douglas once again as he looks at that race for third place. They're side by side through the left-hander, and Steve Dick has taken over the third place spot. Steve Dick moving around the defending Canadian Superbike champion Michel Mercier to pick up that third place position. Tommy Douglas now will close as they head into the carousel. There you can see just how bumpy the track is in this particular section. The camera moving back and forth, a little bit of breakup on the picture, but superb shots here. You can see just how hard these riders are running the bikes up through the turns as they come up to the top of the hill. And there is McMillan going around Douglas. Paul McMillan moves his Suzuki into the 5th place spot. Rider number 24, the leader, Ruben McMurder, really hanging off that Rothmans Honda Interceptor. They have lap number 32 there, Glenn Friend. Gary Goodfellow to within 5 bike lengths. There you can see the interval back to the 3rd place rider, number 101, Steve Dick. Then number 1, Michel Mercier in 4th. Paul McMillan, number 9, runs 5th. And then Tommy Douglas back in the 6th place position. So Dick now starting to pull ahead. Just a little bit of Mercier side by side for 7th between McDonald and Ramsey. The 2 Nova Scotia riders really going at it, and Gary Goodfellow starting to make his move. He's close to within about 3 bike lengths of Ruben McMurder. You're looking at the old Honda technology in that Interceptor, and here is the new technology, the RC30. Gary Goodfellow pulls alongside and takes the lead. Gary Goodfellow finally getting around Ruben McMurder. A bike length apart into the carousel. McMurder on the inside of Goodfellow. He shuts the door to retake the spot. McMurder appear to have the lead by just a couple of inches going into the carousel. Goodfellow puts it across his front wheel to shut the door and retake that spot.
Pat, Goody's been coming on McMurder for the last 3 or 4 laps, and he's right up in there now, and I'm sure he's going to hang on.
Side by side for 4th, Paul McMillan inside of Michel Mercier into the 4th place position.
And you're watching the Rothman Superbike Challenge from Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia.
Can your motor oil survive the punishment today's engines dish out? Circulating it twice as fast, working it twice as hard, breaking it down and causing it to lose its viscosity. That's why you need an oil with the additive that does more to help prevent viscosity breakdown. Castrol XLR, the oil engineered for today's cars. Look for Castrol XLR at these and other leading retailers.
What's the world-famous Metropolitan representative up to now, Charlie Brown?
He wants to make sure people know that Metropolitan offers individual life, group life and health, RRSPs, and retirement plans.
What's he got in mind?
Good grief.
Spectacular!
Get Met. It pays.
What exactly does Nissan mean by hard-body truck? Well, you get a lot of cab room. What exactly does Nissan mean by hard-body truck? Well, let's say you're moving to a new neighborhood.
Welcome back to Atlantic Motorsport Park in Nova Scotia. I'm Craig Hill with Pat Gonzalez, and we're into the final laps of our feature Superbike race here today.
It's been a superb race with the lead change putting Gary Goodfellow, number 11, ahead of 24, McMurder, and there's Paul McMillan. Oh no, McMillan has crashed his Suzuki while challenging for 3rd.
Well, he was going quick, Pat, awfully quick, and you know, I think he just got a little bit wide coming out of that last corner, coming onto the straight, and got into the rough stuff, and away he went.
Here is the race for 4th. Number 1, Michel Mercier just ahead of Tommy Douglas, and Clyde McDonald goes through on the inside. McDonald riding the wheels off a stock production machine that he's running here in the Superbike race. That's a Kawasaki 750, and Douglas goes right back into the 5th place spot. They have been swapping it back and forth. What a great race for 3rd. You're with the leaders. Gary Goodfellow, number 11, 24, Ruben McMurder, and they have been this close, really, for the last 5 or 6 laps. Once Goodfellow got around, McMurder just would not let him get away, and there's the blue and white. Last lap flag out at the line. McMurder now with less than a lap to go to try to reel back in Gary Goodfellow, and they'll be coming up on a couple of slower riders. Just a bike length and a half out of the hairpin, and Craig, we're seeing a superb battle here between these 2 Honda-mounted riders.
Oh, you bet. They're both going at it really tight, and I bet you they've been bumping wheels out there all day today, Pat.
There's the battle for 4th. Mercier just ahead of Douglas and Clyde McDonald. And there is the 7th place rider, young Michael Griffiths on the Suzuki. Goodfellow and McMurder into the carousel now for the final time. It's still a bike length separating Gary Goodfellow and Reuben McMurder as they come up through turn number 10 now. Goodfellow holding him off. Just one corner to go. They're on the straightaway. The checkered flag is out. Gary Goodfellow to the line, and Goodfellow will win it. McMurder in second. Here is Steve Dick, number 101. He'll bring his Suzuki to the stripe in third. It'll be number 2, Tommy Douglas, fourth. And there is Mercier. He will be fifth. McDonald sixth.
A great race with the win in the 15 Castrol Championship point.
That forms the backbone of the road course at this multi-purpose racing facility here in Calgary. With me, as always, for round 4 of our 6-race series is Craig Hill.
Well, Pat, you know, I think a racing facility like this is the racing facility of the future. Very close to downtown urban centers, all right? Not 15 minutes from downtown Calgary. It forms a drag strip, which is right behind us here, where they have drag racing of cars. It forms a road racing circuit where they have road racing of cars and road racing of motorcycles. And over behind these grandstands, immediately behind us, is another set of grandstands with an oval, where they have oval track racing. And last night, they had Supercross. So the people from Calgary, they can see all kinds of racing. And I think it's just the way of the future. And I think that this is the way motorsport should be for all cities across this country.
We'll be showing you 2 races on today's show. The first for stock production 750cc motorcycles. These bikes cannot be modified and must run on street-legal treaded tires. Kawasaki, Suzuki, Yamaha, and Honda all have motorcycles producing over 100 horsepower. So with the machine so very, very close, it ultimately becomes a rider's class, where fierce, close competitive racing is usually the order of the day. The second race we'll be seeing is the Superbike feature. The stock production machines have been modified, the chassis built up, and the engine horsepower boosted to some 125 to 130. Most of the machines will run on slick tires to put that extra horsepower to the racetrack.
And you know, what's important about that horsepower, Pat, is when you leave the start line here, because that horsepower and the very light weight of these bikes, they wheelie up very easily, so they have to be very careful. But today's race is not going to be won or lost on that start line. It's going to be won or lost at the end of this straightaway, where drafting is very important. And yesterday, in between qualifying periods, you had a chance to talk to Steve Dick about his techniques.
It's very important, Pat, especially if there's a headwind, which usually in late afternoon there is. So it makes quite a difference, especially being that there's quite a reasonably tight infield after the straightaway. If a guy gets the draft and blows by the guys down the straight and then makes up a little bit of time in the infield, he can be far enough away to be out of reach for the last final lap.
Steve Dick has had his problems already here at Calgary, destroying 2 motors earlier in the weekend in practice and in qualifying. They're now on their 3rd engine, and that just doesn't have the same horsepower that he had when he won round number 3 at Shannonville. That race was an interesting one. Points leader going into that event, Reuben McMurder, had a commanding lead, but he crashed, surrendering first place to Steve Dick. Steve held on to take his first Superbike win of the season. Behind Steve Dick was a ferocious battle for second place, involving number 87, Norm Murphy, 1, defending Superbike champion Michel Mercier, number 2, Tommy Douglas, and number 9, Paul McMillan. But Steve Dick was the best rider on that day and now heads the point standings coming here to Calgary.
The Superbike Championship points race has really tightened up, with Steve Dick in first, followed by Reuben McMurder with 33, Douglas 26, Murphy 22, and the 1987 champion Mercier has 16, Goodfellow 15, and then down to a tie between Mike Griffiths and veteran Paul McMillan. And Pat, with 15 championship points going to the winner and 2 extra points going to the Michelin pole winner here today, you know, this championship series is still wide open for somebody.
The question everyone is asking here at Calgary is, can Reuben McMurder, Gary Goodfellow, or Steve Dick be at their best? Because they've all been injured recently. At Shannonville, Goodfellow broke a couple of bones in his left foot in his production race crash, and McMurder in the Superbike final, of course, crashed his Rothmans Honda machine. Steve Dick jetted over to Japan to race in the Suzuka 8-hour race. He fell off there and twisted the ligaments in his ankle. So all of those riders are running hurt here this weekend. But you know, preparation for the Superbike race here in Calgary is all important. Every rider has his own ritual or routine that he goes through prior to a race weekend. Here's Team Ciampini rider Paul McMillan on how he approaches a Superbike race.
Well, I'm fortunate enough to have raced here last year in practice, so I'm well versed with Calgary, but still there's cracks come up over the winter, and there's maybe new oil patches from car races they've had in weeks past. So I'll ride around slowly and check for those things and get off my bike occasionally in some of the trickier corners and get down on my hands and knees occasionally, and just to see the lay of the track. And it's not so much the entrance to the corners that's important to me as the exits are, because the momentum you carry out of the corners in the end results in a higher top speed on the straightaway. So the entrance to both straightaways was very critical here.
We'll see how all the riders handle Race City Speedway when we return with the Pro 750 production race right after this. Welcome back to Race City Speedway in Calgary. The motorcycles are rolling up to the starting grid for our Pro 750 production race. The rider on the pole position is the current points leader, Michel Mercier, on his Suzuki. But alongside are two of the young lions in production racing, Miguel Duhamel on the Kawasaki and Mike Griffiths on the Suzuki. Outside of row one will be Tommy Douglas on the Yamaha. He's been flying here all weekend. But the three riders who are sitting in the second row all have got a good shot at winning it. Ruben McMurder won our season opener in this class at San Air. Norm Murphy is a veteran. He'll ride the Kawasaki. And Steve Crevier will be aboard a Yamaha. He's making his first start in this year's Pro 750 production class.
Crevier was a regular with the series last year, but decided to join it for the two Western races. He's an aggressive rider, and he knows this track well.
Michel Mercier with the hole shot off the line. Miguel Duhamel, number 97, will tuck right in behind and follow him down the straightaway. Here's Mike Griffiths trying to outbreak Mercier into that first turn, but it's Miguel Duhamel, 97, on that lime green Kawasaki, who will lead the riders through this first series of left and right-hand turns. There you can see Duhamel, one of our very talented rookies, number 1, Mercier in second, Mike Griffiths, number 315, back in that third place position, and already Duhamel is starting to stretch it out here over Michel Mercier. As they come up through the S's here now, it is 97 Duhamel, your leader, followed by Mercier. Three-way battle there for the third place position, involving 315 Griffiths along with 87 Murphy and number 2 Tommy Douglas. Murphy in a fourth, Douglas running fifth, as the train of production machines work their way up out of the back straightaway. There is 97 Duhamel as they run it into the carousel to come around here to complete lap number 1. And Craig, Duhamel is showing a lot of speed here in the early going, leading that machine right over in the carousel.
Oh, you're right, Pat. But you know, Duhamel's another one of those young riders that we've got in this series that started out in Supercross and motocross. And you know, Pat, there's got to be something about that teaches these riders a sense of balance, because this kid's got a lot of talent and he's going to go a long way.
Battle for third there you saw between 315 Mike Griffiths and number 87 Norm Murphy. There's Griffiths and Murphy has gone through into third. You're back with the leader, Miguel Duhamel, number 97, here on lap 2, as he continues to lead over number 1 Mercier. 87 Murphy now is closed on Mercier. Griffiths is right there, and really the next 6 or 7 riders are all running nose to tail, tied together in the battle for second place. Meanwhile, there's your leader, 97 Miguel Duhamel, as he continues to stretch out that lead, pushing the Kawasaki here to its limits as he comes up through the chicane here and on to the back straightaway. Second place rider is still Michel Mercier, followed by 87 Murphy in third. Behind him, 315 Griffiths in fourth, and number 2 Tommy Douglas back in fifth. Part of the great crowd here in Calgary watching the production action. There you can see just how close it is all the way through the top 10. That's number 61 there, Dwight McKinley, and number 57, that is Darrell Fletcher, and Fletcher showing the horsepower as he goes by on the straightaway. Duhamel, your leader, Murphy around Mercier into the second place position. So it's Kawasaki's running 1-2 as the veteran Murphy has moved around Mercier into that second place position. Mercier trying to take it back. It's still Griffiths, 315, running fourth, and Tommy Douglas back in fifth.
Yes, but look at Crevier coming, Pat. He's moving along pretty quick, and I'm sure he's going to be up with the leaders in another lap or so.
Crevier right in the thick of that battle for second, third, all the way back into about 8th place. Darrell Fletcher has moved up into the 7th place position as they've been shuffling it back and forth. Here's the battle for second between the Kawasaki rider Murphy, number 87, and Mercier in third. Griffiths followed by 73 now. Crevier has moved into the 5th place position, so Steve Crevier is the rider on the charge as Fletcher now has moved up into 6th, and Tommy Douglas being shuffled back to 7th, and there's a crash. That is number 61, Dwight McKinley, who has crashed his Suzuki. McKinley appears to be okay, but his afternoon has ended here early in Pro 750 production. Duhamel, the leader, going through. Still Murphy, 87 in second. Mercier third, and there is Crevier, number 73, as he pulls up alongside of Mercier. They're side by side on the straightaway. Crevier up to the outside. Mercier, number 1, still side by side into the turn, and Mercier will hold him off.
Oh, Pat, just outstanding racing up this drag strip straightaway at Race City. I can't believe this guy. And that was a gutsy move by Mercier to hold off Crevier. And I asked him earlier how he was going to hold off these young Chargers.
Well, I think I'll see how the race goes because, you know, I know they will be much more aggressive than I because right now my championship is, you know, I have a good lead. So I'll see during the race, and mainly I'll try to take the lead and split. But if I see then, you know, I can't do it, then, you know, I might just follow whoever is in front and see if I can find a spot where I could make a move on the last lap.
Michel Mercier trying to make his move, but right now he's sitting back in that 5th place position as Crevier goes through in second, then 87 Murphy third, and Darrell Fletcher is another rider who has moved up here. He's running 4th. Mercier, as we said, back in that 5th place position, but you can see just how close those riders are, and then it's Tommy Douglas running back in the 6th place position. So the riders still tied together as they run it up through and onto the drag strip straightaway, and there is 57 Fletcher pulling up alongside of Murphy to challenge for that 3rd place position, and Fletcher is through into the 3rd place spot. So it is 97 Duhamel leading, 73 Crevier in second, 57 Darrell Fletcher now on the Honda RC30 runs 3rd, Murphy 87 4th, and back in 5th it's Michel Mercier. You're with the leader, Duhamel, and he's being reeled in here, Craig, by Crevier. He is really putting on a charge, and oh, it is Douglas number 2 who crashes. The bike and the rider go end over end. Douglas is up. He appears to be okay. He's running over to his machine. Tommy is okay, but he took a hard tumble there.
Oh, that's very unlike Tommy. He's a very, very careful rider, Pat. He must have got into some very loose stuff coming into the corner there.
There's the blue and white last lap flag out at the start-finish line. Miguel Duhamel by about 12 to 15 bike lengths, but Crevier is on the charge. There is 228. That's Steve Dick on a borrowed machine, running with Gary Berg, number 28, Ruben McMurder, and I believe that is 16, Jimmy DeWitt. That's a battle a little bit further back in the pack. But up front, Steve Crevier continues to reel in. Number 97, Miguel Duhamel, with about half a lap to go. Mike Griffiths, 3:15, followed by another close battle. That is Steve Dick, 2:28, Gary Berg, number 28. The racing has been superb and close all the way through the top 10. There are the leaders. 97 Duhamel, 73 Crevier. Off the end of the back straightaway, into the carousel now for the final time, and Crevier continues to close. It's down to just a couple of bike lengths with just a couple of corners to go. Duhamel on the Kawasaki, Crevier on the Yamaha. They're out of the final turn, out of the straightaway. Crevier pulls up alongside as they come to the line, side by side, across the line in a photo finish, and both riders put their fists in the air as though they both think they've won.
Oh, Pat, I'm sure they both feel they've won. You know, let's have a look at that finish line in freeze frame while the officials make up their minds who did win this race.
Well, the officials have given the win to Duhamel by a matter of inches. Crevier, Fletcher, Murphy, and Mercier, followed by Trinder, Griffiths, Berg, Steve Dick, and Jim DeWitt. And we'll be back in Calgary with the Molson Canadian Superbike Challenge in a moment. Welcome back to Race City Speedway and the Molson Canadian Superbike Challenge. The bikes have rolled up to the starting grid for the start of this race. If there's a spoiler in today's event, it could be Steve Crevier, number 73. He was flying here in qualifying. He'll be going from the outside of row 1. Now here's Craig Hill.
And on the pole for the first time this year is Yamaha rider Tommy Douglas. Next is Ruben McMurder, who badly needs a win here in his chase for the number 1 plate.
Michel Mercier, the current number 1 plate holder, is 3rd on a Suzuki, and 4th is Steve Crevier, who is no doubt still questioning that photo finish in the Pro 750 production race to Miguel Duhamel. The 2nd row, Gary Goodfellow, Norm Murphy, and Miguel Duhamel. The 3rd row, McMillan, Dick Holzinger, and Gary Berg. The 4th row, Reg Down, Dwight McKinley, and Mike Griffiths. Row 5, Kevin Johnson, Ralph Winnett, Jimmy DeWitt, and Ken Lalonde. In the 6th row, Bill Smy, Alan Cameron, and Mike Marcelli. Martin Ducharme and James Fahey make up the 7th and final row. Riders revving those engines, looking for the flag, and there it is. Tommy Douglas, number 2, from the Sony Handycam. You see Douglas has got clear sailing down the drag strip straightaway here at Race City Speedway as the field charges into turn 1. It's Tommy Douglas at the front of the field. The challenge now for 3rd, 3 wide into turn 1 for that 3rd place position. McMurder, number 24, right there in 3rd as he got through. Goodfellow, 11, and 73 Crevier, and there's a crash. That is 97 Duhamel, 373 Holzinger, and I believe Paul McMillan, number 9, is the other rider off. Yes, there is McMillan trying to pick up his machine. 97 Duhamel has also gone off along with Holzinger. There's your leader, Tommy Douglas, number 2, on the Yamaha, who started here from the pole. Mercier, number 1, in 2nd. 24 McMurder in 3rd as the riders still tightly bunched. 73 Crevier, 11 Goodfellow, and 101 Steve Dick. As the front-running 6 riders are so tightly bunched as they come off the end of the back straightaway and into the carousel here on lap 1. But it is 24 McMurder who is really putting the pressure on 1 Mercier as they come through the carousel here for the first time. And there you can see the riders pushing it very hard as they come out of the straightaway. Douglas, your leader. Mercier in 2nd. 24 McMurder now showing the horsepower on that Honda. And 73 Crevier has moved right up there to challenge. Crevier up to the outside of McMurder, looking for that 3rd place position. The yellow caution flag is out as Crevier goes through into 3rd.
And I think Steve Crevier just waved Ruben McMurder back by. Steve passed him under a waved yellow flag at the scene of the accident, and you know Crevier could have been in big trouble had he passed on the yellow. Tommy Douglas is still doing a great job out front, and his crew have really found something extra in that Yamaha.
Tommy's Yamaha is running very strong here at Calgary, and the bike appears to be well suited to the 2 long straightaways that make up the road course. But you know, Tommy's crew has really been working all season long trying to get more horsepower out of the bike, and I asked them what they've done recently to improve the power on the machine.
There's been a couple of things, Pat. The first thing was Yamaha on Tuesday finally came through and gave us a kit that we've been asking for all summer, which was fresh parts for the whole motor, including pipe, carbs, cams, the whole works. So we put that in till midnight Tuesday night and then hopped in the truck and started driving to Calgary. And we stopped in Montana, and DynoJet did some work for us on the carburetors, and that really helped out a lot. We've noticed it off the line. It's been a great help. But also I feel my riding is starting to improve. There's been a learning curve, and it plateaued for a little while, but now it's starting to go on the increase again.
Well, Tommy Douglas right now trying to increase his lead over a ferocious 2nd place battle that right now sees number 24, Ruben McMurder, on the Rothmans Honda machine. And look at this race for 3rd. Side by side, Crevier moving around Michel Mercier into that 3rd place position. There's McMurder in 2nd, the new 3rd place rider, Crevier number 1, Mercier in 4th, 11 Goodfellow 5th. Part of the capacity crowd here in Calgary watching the action further back in the pack. This is 11th, 12th, and 13th. That is Reg Down, number 91, along with Dwight McKinley, and number 16, Jimmy DeWitt. You could see just how far they are back of the leader, Douglas. And now McMurder, number 24, starts to reel him in down to about 5 bike lengths at the end of the drag strip straightaway going into turn 1. Crevier, number 73, has also closed it up. So the front-running 3 riders have broken away from the pack that for a moment involved about 4 riders for 2nd, but both McMurder and Crevier, Craig, have moved right up onto Tommy.
Oh, you bet. There's some kind of racing going on out there at the moment, Pat. And you notice these 3 guys seem to have a lot more power down the straightaways. And poor old Goodfella, he's having to shift with his hand. And I can't believe how he's hanging in there in 4th spot at the moment.
We talked about the Yamaha being suited to this racetrack. It is a motorcycle that has an awful lot of top-end horsepower, and both Crevier and rider number 2, Tommy Douglas, have been using that to their advantage. On the straightaway, Crevier trying to chase down number 24, McMurder, whose Rothmans Honda machine has also been fast all season long. Crevier working the draft that we talked about earlier. Crevier up to the outside of McMurder. He'll take over that 2nd place position. That was the classic draft and pass move there by Steve Crevier as he moves around Ruben McMurder into the 2nd place position. So for the moment, it's Yamaha's running 1, 2, then 24 McMurder back into 3rd place spot. Gary Goodfellow having a pretty tough battle in 4th with number 1, Michel Mercier. As they come up through the chicane here, it's still 2 Douglas up front, 73 Crevier in 2nd, McMurder number 24 in 3rd, and they continue to pull ahead of that 4th place battle between Mercier and number 11, Gary Goodfellow. Now Crevier, 73, has his sights set on the leader, number 2, Tommy Douglas, as they come off the end of the back straightaway and into the carousel. They'll be coming up on some slower riders. There is the leader, Douglas, going around one of the back markers, who now goes a lap down to the leader.
And Pat, you can see how far he leans that bike over because the horizon changes from the pickup on that Sony Handycam camera on his bike. And Tommy's really doing an outstanding job right at the moment.
Well, right now, Douglas being drafted by number 73. Crevier was tucked right in. Crevier will try to pull the same move, and he does. Crevier has taken the lead at the end of the straightaway going into turn 1. Douglas, there you can see those superb pictures from the Sony Handycam. You're aboard Tommy Douglas's Yamaha as he tries to stay with the new leader, Steve Crevier, but Crevier rocketing away off of that turn. And now McMurdo, number 24, swoops around into the second place position. So Douglas in a couple of corners gets pushed back into third as the riders still tightly bunched up front. But now the order is Crevier, McMurdo, and then Tommy Douglas, who for the moment sits back in that third place position.
And Pat, these changes have all taken place in as little as a quarter of a lap.
There's the fourth place rider, Gary Goodfellow, through the right-hander onto the back straightaway, and Gary reaches down and he's shifting with his left hand.
And there's the revised race order with Crevier leading, followed by McMurdo.
And the rest of your top 10, including Calgary's Reg, down there in ninth. And we'll be back with more of the Molson Canadian Superbike Challenge in a moment.
Welcome back to Calgary's Race City Speedway and the conclusion of this Superbike Challenge. With Steve Crevier still in the lead, here's Pat Gonzalez.
And Crevier has done a tremendous job here today. There's the blue and white last lap flag out, considering Crevier has not raced in our previous 3 events, and there's 44. That is Kevin Johnson, the Regina, Saskatchewan rider, who is okay, but he has crashed coming on the front straightaway. Crevier on that Pacific Yamaha FZR 750 working his way out of the chicane and onto the back straightaway. He makes the quick check over the left shoulder to see the second place rider, McMurdo, some 25 to 30 bike lengths back. McMurdo also making a quick check over the left shoulder, but a long way back in third is Tommy Douglas. It is 73 Crevier working his way through the carousel now for the final time. And Crevier, who came oh so close in that 750 production race, comes out of the final turn. The checkered flag will be out. There's a couple of lap riders, and the checkered flag for Steve Crevier as he wins it. McMurdo will finish second.
And a great race for Crevier. And there are the final standings, with Crevier winning, followed by McMurdo, who now leads the championship just ahead of Steve Dick, who finished 8th. So it's going to be a great battle when we next go to Westwood in BC for round 5 of the championship. And here's Pat Gonzalez with the presentation.
First of all, the rider who was third, he started on the pole, Tommy Douglas. Ron Trott from Race City Speedway will present the third place trophy. And now our second place finisher, he's back in the points lead on the Rothmans Honda Interceptor, Ruben McMurdo. And our winner here in Calgary this afternoon, giving us our 4th different winner in 4 races so far this year, Steve Crevier.
A great day for Steve Crevier, coming oh so close in the Pro 750 production and winning his first Superbike championship race. I'm Craig Hill for Pat Gonzalez. See you in BC for round 5 of the Castrol Superbike Series.
Good afternoon and welcome to Shannonville Motorsport Park and the Pepsi Superbike Challenge presented by Castrol Canada. Hello everyone, I'm Pat Gonzalez with Craig Hill for our final motorcycle race of the 1988 Castrol road racing season.
And what a season it's been, Pat. 5 races, 4 different winners. The only repeat winner this year has been Goodfellow. And in the 750 production race, which we have coming up right after this opening, Michel Mercier has pretty well wrapped up the season.
Well, we talked about the 5 previous races. Coming into the 6th and final round, there are 4 riders who have a shot at that number 1 plate that right now belongs to Michel Mercier. Ruben McMurdo heads the point standings with 50. He won the season opening event at Saint-Air, but since then he's had an up and down season, including a crash here at Shannonville while leading in round number 3. The number 2 ranked rider right now is Steve Dick. He won the last race here at Shannonville, and he'll be carrying Suzuki's hopes for the championship. Sitting in the 3rd place spot is Gary Goodfellow on the Honda. Gary won the qualifying race in the dry here yesterday, picking up the Michelin pole position and the all-important 2 points. And the other rider who has a shot at the number 1 plate is Tommy Douglas on his Yamaha. He qualified on the pole at Calgary and had a good run there, finishing in 3rd. So those are the 4 riders coming into the showdown here at Shannonville who have a shot at the number 1 plate and Canadian Superbike Championship.
Sure, but the number 1 plate isn't everything, you know, Pat. We've talked all year long about that $500,000 that's available in prize and contingency money. And you know, if we were to take one guy, the guy that's been the hottest, Gary Goodfellow, over the last 3 weeks, he's won in Japan, he won the last race at Westwood, and this guy could collect an awful lot of money today. For the 600 production, he could walk away with $8,700, and he's wrapped that one up. So that's the first bit of money that he's got. Pro 750, he's got the pole for it. Although he can't win the championship, he can still run up there well enough in order to pick up a good piece of change there. But in the Superbike race, this guy could win $11,700 by winning the race today and that grand whopping $25,000 check. But you know what? The elements are against everybody today, and I don't know about the riders, but I'm going back to the broadcast booth where it's warm and dry.
Well, the riders will have to contend with some pretty bad conditions here on the racetrack. It's been raining off and on. It's drizzling right now. Just about all of the Superbike teams have put on the rain tires. But you know, the end of the season also means the graduation of some of our top amateur riders into the professional ranks for next year. So in 1989, we'll see these top amateur riders as rookie pros. Number 26, the likable Lindley Clark from Barrie, Ontario, won several amateur championships this season. Number 13, Yves Brisson of St. Catherine, Quebec, won the amateur 600 production title. And the 19-year-old from Quebec, Jacques Gannett, will be one of the top rookies next year. Those are some of the riders we look ahead to seeing next year in our coverage. But this afternoon at Shannonville, the focus, the excitement, you can feel it building. The battle for the number 1 plate and the Canadian Superbike Championship is on the line. The rain continues to fall, and we'll be back with highlights of the Pro 750 production race. We'll then have coverage of the Pro Formula 2 final featuring Italian star Stefano Carracci and Canadian champion Jonathan Cornwell. And then we'll have our Superbike feature. We'll be back at Shannonville in a moment. Welcome back to Shannonville Motorsport Park and the Pepsi Superbike Challenge. The motorcycles are on the starting grid for our Pro 750 production final. Michel Mercier has already wrapped up the championship, but there's a lot of riders looking to move up in the point standings that'll decide how a lot of that year-end contingency cash and prize money will be decided. Here's Craig Hill.
And that's the front row of this very important money race here today. And as Pat said, the new champion is Mercier, but he's going to have to start at the back, and it's going to be some struggle in this rain to move up.
Duhamel, a big wheelie away quickly. Number 315, Griffiths, dives in, but it is Goodfellow through on the inside in the second, Griffiths third. And there's number 1, Mercier, up to the outside. He'll pass about a half a dozen riders going through turn 1. So Mercier, who started at the back, is already charging up through the field. Very difficult here on this opening lap as the riders test the traction, try to keep those motorcycles as upright as possible through the turns. Miguel Duhamel charges into that lead aboard the lime green Kawasaki, and he's opened up a pretty good cushion on Gary Goodfellow, who runs in the second place spot. The battle now is for third between number 2, Tommy Douglas, who's moved ahead of 101, Steve Dick, and then Mercier, number 1. What a charge he has put on here on this opening lap. He's all the way up into 5th and moving, and now Mercier has moved around Steve Dick. Michel Mercier, who won this championship at our last event out at Westwood, has already climbed up into the 4th place spot, and he continues to charge up onto the leaders. And what a job these riders are doing here, Craig, in these very difficult conditions.
Well, rain's a great equalizer for everybody out there, Pat. And as you're well aware, these guys are running on stock street tires. They're not as sticky, and they don't have the rain grooves in them that a full rain tire has, so they have to be very careful out there. They get into some puddles, they could be in trouble, but Mercier's doing an outstanding job right now.
Number 2, Tommy Douglas, challenging Gary Goodfellow, number 11 for second, and Tommy Douglas will take over the second place spot at the end of the straightaway. Going into turn 11, Goodfellow being pushed back into third as the riders push it to the limit here on the opening lap. There is Douglas, your new second place rider, and there is 315, Mike Griffiths. He pushed it a little bit too long at the end of that back straightaway. He has got it turned around, but Mike Griffiths, 315, had to go down the escape road. The race now for third place between 11 Goodfellow, number 1 Michel Mercier, and right behind him, that is the number 99 machine of John Ramsey. Here is a rider calling it quits. That was 16 Eric Viel. Rider number 35 battling a little further back in the pack is Australia's Ian Buster Saunders. It is Duhamel, followed by Douglas, then 11 Goodfellow, number 1 Mercier in the 4th place spot. And then rider number 99, John Ramsey on the Honda RC30, back in the 5th place position.
Pat, it's interesting that Goodfellow is elected to ride his Pro 600 bike. He probably thinks that the thing is more manageable in the rain, but Mercier's in the process of running them down pretty fast right now.
Into the hairpin, Mercier moves up to the outside, but Goody will hold on to that 3rd place position. Now as they go out of the back straightaway, Mercier's 750 Suzuki should be the faster machine, and he has moved around Goodfellow on the back straightaway. So Michel Mercier in a 3rd, and oh, Mercier has crashed. He appeared to lock up the front wheel. The Pro 750 production champion goes for a terrifying tumble at the end of that straightaway. The motorcycle still sliding, but there is Mercier. He has got up from the crash, but a tough break for Michel.
Oh, that's a tough way for a champion to end the series, Pat. He clinched the Pro 750 production crown at Westwood, and I know that he really wanted to do well at this, his home track.
Number 87, Norm Murphy, and 73, Steve Crevier battling for 10th.
And there's Mercier back on his Suzuki, Pat, with the race order Duhamel, Douglas, Goodfellow, Ramsey, and Eddie Brunet. In 6th is Steve Dick, followed by Royer, Cooper, Pilon, and Crevier. And you know, Pat, Crevier has done well lately. He joined the series late and was a surprise winner at our last Pro 750 production race at Westwood.
Well, Crevier was a big winner there, but obviously the conditions here at Shannonville not to his liking this afternoon. You watch the lead battle between number 2, Tommy Douglas, who's trying to chase down the current leader, 97, Miguel Duhamel. They're just a few bike lengths apart as they come back into the famed Allen's Corner here at Shannonville Motorsport Park. That very tight left-hander, there's Duhamel just ahead of number 2, Tommy Douglas, as they go back and forth. 35, Australia's Ian Buster Saunders having a good run here with number 10, David Gremmett, who has moved around into the 13th place position. So great racing all the way back through the field despite the bad track conditions. And there is Goodfellow, 11. He is off the racetrack, Craig.
Oh, yeah, he went down, Pat, but I don't think he went down all that hard. And luckily, he probably didn't re-injure that foot of his that he hurt here in round 3.
Goody struggling to pick up that Honda 600. He's got it upright, but I don't think he's going to try to continue. There is the new 3rd place rider, number 99, John Ramsey from Nova Scotia. Ramsey perhaps a little more used to these wet track conditions. There is Duhamel, your leader, followed by Tommy Douglas, and Douglas has closed up the margin.
And there's John Ramsey. He's a Nova Scotia rider, and he's used to riding in wet conditions, but he just hasn't been able to come to grips with this racetrack today yet, Pat.
Ramsey taking a quick check over his shoulder, looking for the 4th place rider, Steve Dick, number 101, who is well back of these 2 riders who continue to battle for the lead. Duhamel, 97, Douglas, number 2, and there is Eddie Brunet, number 12. Brunet has crashed at the end of the back straightaway in precisely the same spot that Mercier crashed earlier. Here's Douglas up to the outside of Duhamel through Allen's Corner. Tommy Douglas really putting the pressure on Miguel Duhamel, and Duhamel goes down. Duhamel crashes. Douglas slows his machine up. He avoids hitting Duhamel, and now Tommy will continue. Duhamel gets right back on his machine, and he will continue to the roar of the crowd here in the capacity-filled grandstand at Shannonville. So the 2 riders almost came together. The blue and white last lap flag is out.
Pat, I think somebody's dropped oil or something on the track, because there's been a lot of riders go down in the last couple of minutes, and the track seems very, very, very slippery.
Well, Tommy Douglas, less than a lap to go. There's 101, Steve Dick. He's pointing down to his machine or the racetrack. There's definitely a problem there with probably Dick's machine. He was pointing down as though something was going amiss aboard that Suzuki. But for the moment, Tommy Douglas makes the quick check over the left shoulder. He's got some room, and here's Goody. He has remounted and has made his way back to the start-finish line, but it looks like Gary will park it here for the afternoon. Less than a lap to go. Tommy Douglas off the end of the back straightaway aboard that Yamaha. He lifts the visor on the helmet. Visibility has been a problem throughout this race, but Douglas just a couple of quarters to go to win this final Pro 750 Production Championship event here at Shannonville Motorsport Park. Douglas brings it out of that final right-hand turn where Duhamel crashed on that previous lap. Here's Douglas. He'll be very cautious as he comes on the front straightaway. Tommy Douglas brings this Yamaha up across the line. He takes the checkered flag for the win. And there you can see just how slippery it is on the front straightaway, Craig.
Oh, for sure, Pat, it's slippery. You can see Miguel Duhamel as he takes second spot, sliding all over the road. And in third is Sydney, Nova Scotia's John Ramsey, then Crevier, Cooper, Steve Dick in sixth, Royer, Hardy, Murphy, Grummet, and McDonald. And that's the lineup, and we'll be back with more from Shannonville in just a moment. Welcome back to the Pepsi Superbike Challenge. I'm Craig Hill along with Pat Gonzalez. And before we get to our feature, the Superbike Championship, here's Pat with highlights of the Formula 2 event that took place earlier today.
The race featured number 73, Steve Crevier, along with 49, Canadian champion John Cornwell, and Italian star Stefano Carracci, who was making his second visit to Canada. Cornwell, starting from the back of the grid, couldn't catch number 75, Carracci, who opened up an insurmountable lead. When Steve Crevier crashed on turn number 2, it was no contest for the Italian 250 Grand Prix star on his Team Ciampini Honda 250. However, a war developed for second place between Cornwell and Keith Jackson on his aging Honda motocrosser turned road racer. The slippery conditions were the great equalizer as far as horsepower was concerned. But Cornwell eventually pulled away to take second place on his Spondon Rotax. Jackson would finish in third.
So on the presentation stand, it was a champagne affair for these three riders. Now here's Pat on the grid for our Superbike Championship feature.
The Superbikes are rolling up to the starting grid for the start of the race that will decide the number 1 plate and Canadian Superbike Championship. Here's Craig Hill with the starting grid.
And there are the top 4 riders who've worked so hard all year long for this last chance to win the Castrol National Superbike Championship.
On the pole, Gary Goodfellow, who won the qualifier in the dry here yesterday. Steve Dick alongside. All eyes focused on the lights. There's Tommy Douglas, number 2. 24, McMurder, and the field away. Douglas almost stalling his machine on the start. They charge into turn 1, and from the Sony Handycam on board Tommy Douglas's machine, you can see just how treacherous the conditions are here off the start. They move up onto the first straightaway as they head up to turn number 2 at the front. McMurder, 24, on the Rothmans Honda machine leads.
Well, the conditions are bad, Pat, but you know, it's not quite so bad for the riders out there as you might think. As a matter of fact, I think it's a little harder for the spectators to see the riders. You got to remember, these guys are concentrating on their entry and their exit points on the corners, and they're looking just a short distance in front of them, so it's very important that they stay out of the puddles.
McMurder, 24, by about 5 or 6 bike lengths. Duhamel pushing the Kawasaki very hard here in the opening lap. He'll close it up as they come through turn 6. That, of course, was the corner where McMurder crashed here during round number 3, so perhaps a little bit more cautious through there for the first time. There is number 9, Paul McMillan, who's having a good run, and right behind him, 101, Steve Dick. Dick not getting off to a particularly good start. Neither did Tommy Douglas, number 2, but both of those riders trying to move up. McMurder, 24, your leaders. They come into the hairpin for the first time. 97, Duhamel in second. Number 1, Mercier right there in third. Then it's 11, Gary Goodfellow, followed by number 9, Paul McMillan. Again, you're on board the Yamaha 750 of Tommy Douglas as he comes up on number 62. That is Derek Medaglia on the Suzuki. They're on the back straightaway. Douglas trying to chase down Medaglia. There you can see the rooster tails coming off the rear tire on Medaglia's machine. 24, McMurder leading. Duhamel in second, followed by Mercier. Then it is 11, Goodfellow, and then Paul McMillan, number 9. McMillan known for his very, very strong riding in the wet. Through Allen's corner for the first time, it is 24, McMurder. If he can win it, regardless of where any of the other riders finish here this afternoon, he will take the championship. 97, Duhamel, perhaps will play the role of spoiler here this afternoon. And there is 106, Clyde McDonald. The Nova Scotia rider has retired here early. Duhamel all over McMurder as they run it up through that right-hander. It is Duhamel really putting the pressure on. Duhamel goes inside into the carousel to take over the lead. Miguel Duhamel has taken the lead away from 24, McMurder. Number 1, Mercier now in third, and he starts to mount a challenge for that second place position. Mercier to within a bike length of McMurder. It is McMurder on the Honda. Mercier, the defending champion, on the Suzuki. He goes up to the outside of McMurder through turn 6. And Mercier right up alongside. They're wheel to wheel, and Mercier moves through in a second. It's Duhamel leading. Mercier in second, 24. McMurder back there in the third place spot. Gary Goodfellow, number 11, running fourth, and Paul McMillan is fifth. Again, McMurder will be watching very closely to see where Steve Dick is running on the racetrack. There's Tommy Douglas, I believe. He now moves up on Steve Dick. He'll move around him up to the outside. Tommy Douglas challenging Steve Dick, one of the championship hopefuls, for that position as Douglas continues to march to the front after getting off to a very, very bad start. Miguel Duhamel, 97, followed by Mercier, then 24, McMurder, and McMurder has crashed! McMurder crashes coming out of Allen's corner. He goes for a tumble. Goodfellow has moved in a third, McMillan a fourth. McMurder trying to get that motorcycle restarted. His championship hopes could have ended right here in turn 15 at Shannonville.
Oh, Pat, I think he just grabbed a little bit too much front brake there, and he high-sided the machine. Although it could be still slippery in there, we don't know that. But he's getting a little help and getting the bike started here from an official, and that puts him back in the race. But we all know he's got to finish someplace in the top 10, because if he doesn't finish this race, he's right out of it.
Well, McMurder back on that Rothmans Honda machine. He's going to have to try to get up through the field right now. He's well outside the top 10 at the moment. There's 97, Duhamel, your leader, followed by Mercier.
And that's Steve Dick, number 101, who now has the best chance at winning the championship. I asked him earlier if he felt confident.
Oh, yeah. You know, we've worked out all the possibilities, and, you know, Goodfellow won the heat race. So now if he wins the final, which, you know, is quite possible, I have to get second or third, and Ruben has to be one position behind me, and then we'll be tied for the in the points. But because I have better finishes than him, I'll get the win.
Well, McMurder's crash has really turned this championship battle into a scramble. There's the fifth place rider, 75, Stefano Caracci, followed by 315, Mike Griffiths. Then it is Tommy Douglas, and then number 101, Steve Dick, who runs back in the 8th place spot. And moving up into 9th, just behind Steve Dick, is Ruben McMurder, number 24. This is the 5th place battle. There you can see Caracci, followed by Griffiths. Then number 2, Tommy Douglas, who runs in the 7th place spot. Steve Dick, number 101, is 8th, and there is the number 24 machine of McMurder, who is back in 9th. If McMurder finishes 9th, Goodfellow holds on for 3rd. The championship would go to Goodfellow, number 11, as he continues to run back in that 3rd place position aboard the Don Knit machine. So McMurder has to get up at least into 8th.
There's the rookie leader, Duhamel. I asked him if he'd gained the respect of the other veterans.
At the beginning of the season, I was a rookie, crazy. For a couple of guys, they thought I didn't know what I was doing, so I was just passing them and dicing with them most of the time. And I think it just took them a bit of time to adapt. I guess it was a shock, you know, and also you got to imagine if a rookie would come up to me next year and dice with me, would be, you know, I would say, oh, you're not doing this right. And at the beginning of the season, not a lot of respect. Now I think I'm getting a lot of respect. Lots of people congratulating me on race and less people complaining about stuff.
Ruben McMurder, number 24, challenging Steve Dick. McMurder on the inside will take over that 8th place position. So McMurder, who crashed just a few laps ago, has battled back to put himself in a position where he could win the championship. There are your top 5. Caracci having a good run in 5th, and your new 8th place rider, McMurder. We'll be back with more from Shannonville in a moment.
Welcome back to the conclusion of the Pepsi Superbike Challenge presented by Castro Canada. I'm Craig Hill along with Pat Gonzalez, and that's number 24, Ruben McMurder, on the way to his first National Superbike Championship.
McMurder just passed Caracci there. McMurder now in his 7th, and there's Steve Dick, number 101. He has parked his Suzuki. Miguel Duhamel, number 97, comes out of the final turn and won. Michel Mercier giving him all he can handle. The blue and white last lap flag is out. There's the 3rd place rider, number 11, Gary Goodfellow, on that beautiful Don Knit Sugano Honda RC30. Gary continues to run back in 3rd. He's got less than a lap to go. You're on board Tommy Douglas's Yamaha as he challenges now the 5th place rider, 315, Mike Griffiths. There you can see just how hard Griffiths is riding, leading that Suzuki right over. Douglas pulls up alongside, and he will move into the 5th place position now with less than a lap to go. Miguel Duhamel, number 97, brings his Kawasaki into the hairpin for the final time. Michel Mercier, the defending champion. He would dearly love to win the race here at Shannonville. He knows he must surrender that number 1 plate, but he is battling right down to the final lap. Off the end of the back straightaway, Duhamel still leading the Suzuki of Michel Mercier as they lean it right into the chicane now on this last lap. Number 24, McMurder, has slid back into 8th, but that'll give him the championship. There's the checkered flag as Duhamel wins it. Mercier will finish in 2nd. A couple of lap riders in there, 49 Mike Walsh and 300 Martin Ducharme. There's 11 Gary Goodfellow. Checkered flag for 3rd. It'll be number 9 McMillan in 4th. Number 2 Tommy Douglas will finish back in the 5th place spot. And here's McMurder. He's back in 8th, but that'll be good enough for the championship. McMurder celebrating as he takes the checkered flag.
The final standings with the newest Duhamel family star taking his first national Superbike win, and I'm sure his father, who was a past Canadian champion, is very proud. Ruben McMurder finishes 8th with just enough national points to win the number 1 plate for 1988.
Ruben getting a big hug from his father, Earl, who's been with him since his early years in road racing. It is a championship that certainly was well-deserved. There is the winner, Miguel Duhamel, receiving the trophy from Jeff Weiss of Pepsi Canada, Gary Goodfellow, and Michel Mercier.
And tell me this guy isn't happy. He's had his ups and downs all season long, but with support from his girlfriend Sylvia, manager Mike Dillon, and the whole Rothmans Honda team, he's earned the 88 number 1 plate and the $25,000 bonus check from Castro.
Our congratulations to all the riders who have made this one of the safest and most competitive series. Our thanks to Colin Fraser and the race organization, and we look forward to 1989 and the Castrol National Superbike Championships. On behalf of Craig Hill, I'm Pat Gonzalez. See you next season for more of the best in televised motorsports.